The hatred that burned within Perturabo for Rogal Dorn was not born in a single moment, not sparked by one insult or one battlefield disagreement. It was a slow corrosion of pride, a rivalry forged from insecurity, comparison, silence, and the cruel structure of the Great Crusade itself. To understand why Perturabo hated Dorn so deeply, you have to understand that this was never simply about tactics. It was about identity. It was about recognition. It was about a son who believed he was overlooked, standing in the shadow of a brother who never asked for the light. Perturabo was a being of impossible intellect. From the moment he rose to power on Olympia, it was clear he was something beyond mortal measure. He saw the world not in emotions or poetry, but in angles, stress tolerances, load distributions, and probabilities. He could glance at a fortress and instantly calculate how to break it. He could examine a battlefield and predict its outcome before the first artillery shell landed. But for all his brilliance, there was a hollowness inside him. He did not merely want to be effective. He wanted to be acknowledged as exceptional. He wanted his genius to be seen, affirmed, and admired. When the Emperor found him, Perturabo believed that finally, at last, there would be someone who truly understood him. The Emperor, after all, was a being of supreme intellect. Surely he would recognize Perturabo not just as a weapon, but as a creator, an architect, a visionary mind capable of building wonders to rival the greatest achievements of humanity. But the Great Crusade did not unfold that way. While other legions were given campaigns of glory, compliance through diplomacy, or spectacular victories that inspired entire sectors, the Iron Warriors were assigned the wars no one else wanted. Grinding sieges, attritional meat grinders, fortress worlds that would take years to break. They became the legion called in when patience had failed and brutality was required. Their casualty rates were staggering. Their victories were absolute but joyless. They reduced civilizations to rubble, then moved on to the next target. And in the midst of all this stood Dorn. Dorn was everything Perturabo was not. Where Perturabo simmered with resentment, Dorn was composed. Where Perturabo calculated endlessly, Dorn acted with calm certainty. Where Perturabo sought acknowledgement, Dorn neither sought nor seemed to require it. Dorn simply did his duty. He did not complain about assignments. He did not question his role. He did not hunger for praise. The Emperor entrusted Dorn with fortifying Terra itself. That single decision cut deeper than any blade. Terra was not merely another world. It was humanity's cradle. To defend it was to be the Emperor's shield. It was the ultimate symbol of trust. Perturabo, master of siegecraft, architect beyond compare, was not given that honor. Instead, he was sent to break the walls of others while Dorn was tasked with building the walls of humanity's heart. Was Dorn truly favored? In perception, yes. In reality, perhaps the Emperor simply assigned roles based on temperament. Dorn's unwavering stability made him ideal to stand at Terra's side. Perturabo's ruthless precision made him devastating in offensive warfare. But the Emperor did not explain. He did not soothe. He did not reassure. And in that silence, Perturabo's doubts grew into certainties. Perturabo began to see every commendation Dorn received as a slight against himself. Every time Dorn's fortifications were praised, Perturabo heard an unspoken comparison. Every time Dorn endured hardship without complaint, it seemed like quiet condemnation of Perturabo's bitterness. Dorn's very personality was an affront. He did not rise to taunts. He did not engage in petty rivalry. That calm indifference enraged Perturabo more than open hostility ever could have. There were moments where their philosophical differences surfaced openly. Dorn believed in resilience, in fortifications that inspired defenders to endure against impossible odds. His structures were monuments to loyalty and faith. Perturabo believed in inevitability. His designs were mathematical certainties, optimized to eliminate weakness with ruthless efficiency. To Dorn, war was a matter of holding firm. To Perturabo, it was a matter of breaking the enemy's will through calculated force. But beneath these strategic differences lay something more personal. Perturabo wanted to be seen as the superior mind. He needed it. Dorn did not care about superiority. That imbalance made the rivalry one-sided at first, but it was precisely that imbalance that made it unbearable for Perturabo. Competing against someone who doesn't acknowledge the competition feels like shouting into a void. Then came the Horus Heresy, and all tensions were amplified. Perturabo sided with Horus not purely out of loyalty, but out of accumulated resentment. He felt underappreciated, misused, discarded as a blunt instrument. The rebellion gave him something the Imperium never had: validation. Horus praised him. Horus recognized his brilliance. Horus needed his siege mastery. And so when the traitor forces reached Terra, fate delivered the ultimate confrontation. Perturabo, the master of sieges, would now attempt to break the very defenses Dorn had constructed. The siege of Terra was not just a military engagement, it was symbolic warfare. Perturabo throwing everything he had against Dorn's walls was the physical manifestation of decades of bitterness. Yet even here, the tragedy deepened. Dorn did not personalize it. He did not rage at Perturabo's betrayal in the way Perturabo might have expected. He simply fortified, endured, and fought. The stoicism that had once irritated Perturabo now stood as an immovable wall against his fury. Dorn would not give him the emotional reaction he craved. In many ways, Perturabo hated Dorn because Dorn represented what he could never be. Unshakable, certain, free from the need for praise. Dorn did not appear burdened by doubt. Perturabo was consumed by it. Dorn did not question his father's assignments. Perturabo dissected them endlessly. Dorn endured suffering quietly. Perturabo internalized it until it turned to poison. Jealousy was part of it. Recognition issues were absolutely part of it. And yes, Dorn was favored in ways that mattered symbolically. But deeper than all of that was this. Perturabo needed someone to acknowledge his pain, his genius, his sacrifices. Dorn never did. Perhaps he never realized he needed to. The cruel truth is that if the Emperor had spoken a few words of reassurance, if Dorn had once openly praised Perturabo's brilliance, if someone had broken the silence that allowed resentment to fester, history might have unfolded differently. But in the cold machinery of the Imperium, emotional wounds were ignored, and ignored wounds rot. So Perturabo's hatred became self-sustaining. Every success of Dorn validated his resentment. Every hardship endured by the Iron Warriors reinforced his belief that he had been wronged. By the time Terra burned, the rivalry was no longer about fortifications or assignments. It was about proving that Dorn was not superior, that he, Perturabo, was the true master of siegecraft. In the end, the tragedy is this. Dorn likely never hated Perturabo in return, not in the same way. For Dorn it was war, duty, necessity. For Perturabo it was personal. And sometimes the most destructive rivalries are not born from mutual hatred, but from one soul desperately needing recognition from another who does not know how to give it. That is why Perturabo hated Rogal Dorn. Not because of a single insult, not because of one campaign, but because Dorn stood as a mirror reflecting everything Perturabo feared he was not, and everything he wished the Emperor had seen in him.